All right, time to get down to the Mr. GLOAT podcast. As today we are not going to look up episodes or any boxing match shows. We are going to review, which is my debut for my premiered episode, the top three. This is going to be the first ever episode of the inaugural series. I call it on the GLOAT podcast, the top three. Now, guys, the top three is actually a new idea I'm coming up with the GLOAT podcast, ladies and gentlemen. And the top three is actually a term word that's actually not that conspicuous other than just a working title. Now, let me get this straight just to let you viewers know what I'm talking about and you'll understand, just as so many people don't know. Now, guys, let me get this straight. Now, if any of you people do watch the Deadlock podcast, if you guys do watch it, you know those guys known as James, Anthony, and Johnny Blood. They do the Deadlock podcast where they review episodes, whether it's WWE shows, WCW, TNA, etc., etc. Well, they also review theme songs for one wrestler, and each of the three guys have to pick their three favorite theme songs that's their favorite. So that's what I'm actually doing today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm doing something similar than they're doing. Only this time, instead of talking about theme songs, I'm going to talk about my three favorite boxing matches by one fighter. Instead of that, what better place is it to start off than Oleksandr Usyk? So, ladies and gentlemen, this might be a 30-minute or a 40-minute podcast, but you know what? It's probably better to say never because we don't know if Oleksandr Usyk will fight again, but you know what? Who knows? Now, I just like to point this out, guys. In future times, I will do other episodes where there'll be fighters that I'll be reviewing. And when I say that they're the top three greatest fights in their career, I'm not talking about the fights that they lost or the fights they drawed or the fights that ended in a no contest, even if they won that fight, but it ended in a controversial fight that was a no contest. I'm only going to review their fights that made them winners. So, to be honest, guys, Oleksandr Usyk is 23-0, 14 knockouts, 60.87% of knockouts, and he scored 201 rounds in his career in 11 years. So, guys, let's go back to how he started his pro career. So, in 2012, guys, he already started out trying to make a comeback, and he did that. He started becoming Ukraine champion. He made it to all the way to the top of the food chamber to the finals. After May, he managed to qualify for the London Olympic Games. And he only had three fights to deal with. He took on Artur Beterbiev, a future and now current undisputed light heavyweight champion, and it was a real tough fight. He went 17-13 by points. Yeah, the scorecards back then were really confusing for amateur boxing, and I still try to look it up. His second fight in the semifinals was Kubrat Pullev's brother, aka Tervel Pullev. Yeah, interesting. And even though Tervel Pullev is still boxing today in the cruiserweights, nothing much could be said about that fight. It went 21-5 by points after 3 rounds. And then the finals, he took on the guy that actually defeated him 4 years ago, back in 2008, Clement Russo, a guy that went to the 2008 Olympic Games and defeated him. Clement Russo also went on to defeat Deontay Wilder days later in the semifinals, but Clement Russo got his butt beat by a nobody guy that would later become a mega nobody in the pros. And if you guys want to look that information up, go ahead. But Oleksandr Usyk got his revenge back and got out a close points decision of 14-11 to achieve gold medal. Also, when I say heavyweight, ladies and gentlemen, this was the original heavyweight, which is titled as a cruiserweight tournament. There are two types of heavyweights in amateur boxing: heavyweight and super heavyweight. Super heavyweight in 2012 was won by Anthony Joshua. He was in the gold medalist. Oleksandr Usyk was in the second of the heavyweight, which is under 200 pounds in amateur boxing, but they just call it that. Around January 11th, 2013, months after his gold medal win in August the 11th, 2012, during the finals of the Olympic Games, he went on to be involved in a World Series of Boxing, which isn't, I wouldn't call it an amateur boxing fight. division, but well, you could, but yet again, there wasn't a lot to it because in this tournament, you don't have to fight with headgear on or something. You can fight, even though it doesn't count as professional boxing matches, it can get you more experience in boxing. Surprisingly, January the 11th, he took on Junior Fa, that was somewhat of a future contender at the time, and he got in 5 rounds. He took on a nobody named Eric Bretschwin in February the 1st that year and went 3 rounds by TKO. By the way, each of these fights in the World Series of Boxing are 5 rounds. So, yeah. But then his next fight would be one of his first ever tough competitors in the British boxing industry. His first 2 fights in World Series of Boxing were in his country of Ukraine. But a month later, on March the 1st, he decided to go to York Hall and Bethnal Green to take on Joe Joyce. And guys, when I first saw this fight, I did make comments when I saw this fight a long time ago, like years ago, thinking, man, Oleksandr Usyk looks like that. He looks like Brian Pillman. He's so short and something. He looks like he doesn't even look like a heavyweight. And he went 5 rounds the distance and beated him. I think someone replied to me and said that Brian Pillman is more shorter than Usyk because Usyk's 6'3", but due by the weight and the consideration, he didn't look that tall or big. So I did had my doubts about Oleksandr Usyk at the time, even when before he was champion the heavyweight. But yeah, he doubted me. Yeah. He comes March the 22nd. He takes on a guy named Mohammad Razo in his country of Ukraine. Went 5 rounds by unanimous decision. And then weeks later, on April the 12th, he takes on Metio Modugno and knocked him out in round 2 by TKO. His sixth and last professional fight in the World Series of Boxing will be in Kazakhstan against Mihai Nister in May the 10th, and he went 5 rounds, all by unanimous decision. So, yeah, that was it. So he won all his fights, and surprisingly, he built himself up a good record in boxing. So he's doing good for what he is. And by the way, guys, the last time he ever lost a fight in a boxing career, even as an amateur, was a guy named Igor Mekhonstev in September 11, 2009, in the 2009 AIBA World Championship in the semifinals. Igor won that fight, and a day later, he went on to win in the finals. But that guy's career in professional boxing ended with 13 wins, 8 knockouts, 1 draw in 2014 to 2017 in his professional career. He had a couple undefeated wins and other resumes, but yeah, after his majority draw against Alexander Johnson in 2016, and then a full year later, he had one more fight, he retired for good. So yeah, man, over 14 years since he last lost a fight. Crazy. But yes, time to get to the pros of boxing. But guys, did you viewers know that Oleksandr Usyk started his professional debut in the heavyweight? In November the 9th, 2013, he debuted at 200.5 pounds against a guy that also had the same weight, named Felipe Romero. Now, was Felipe a good fighter? Well, he had 16 wins, 7 losses, 1 draw. It's kind of random to have a guy in his debut to fight a guy with that record. He was a Mexican cruiserweight champion at his time. He had some great victory wins against some nobodies. He lost against a guy named Rigoberto Alvarez, a forgotten light heavyweight super middleweight star that his career faded fast. And he lost against a couple other guys in 2012 that were somehow sort of future champions in the future. And one of those fighters he lost in 2012 would later take on Oleksandr Usyk. Around 2013, he lost against Alex Lepay, that was already turning into a journeyman at that time. And then months later, Usyk knocked out Felipe in the 3rd round, but he got back up to finish up a couple more rounds in a 6-round fight. He knocked him down and won in round 5 by TKO. As for Felipe's career, he would later lose against future light heavyweight champion Dmitry Bivol in August of 2015, and it was Bivol's 4th professional fight. And of course, yeah, Felipe's other career in 2015, he would lose against David Benavidez. And of course, he would also lose against Igor Mekonstev in 2016. So, wow, things are sure rolling their eyes together. Man, these things are lining up crazy. He even lost against guys like Steve Cunningham, Luis Garcia, Joseph Williams, guys that would have been boxing legends, but they never had a chance to even make it big. Yeah, and of course, Steve Cunningham was the guy that knocked out Tyson Fury in 2013, but he didn't get his back there. So, yeah. So, my point is, guys, even though Felipe isn't really a good fighter, he spent a lot of years boxing more than anyone else. So, having Oleksandr Usyk, an Olympic gold medalist last year, fight in his debut against a fighter like that, that's a that's a little bit tough because just because they're journeyman nobodies doesn't mean they can put in a hard fight to give you a hard time. So yeah, and the next fighter he took on against a month later in December that year was a guy named Epifanio Mendoza, a Colombian boxer that didn't get enough success even in 1999 when he debuted in boxing. He took on a good undefeated fighters early in his career, but after having some losses and other guys he lost against, like Chad Dawson, that should have been a future champion, and BJ Flores in 2009, that would lose against another guy that this Mendoza guy would take on. He also lost against guys like Uniel Dorticos and Sullivan Barrero in cruiserweight fights in 2011, and even Amir Mensur, another legend to talk about, Luis Ortiz, and then he lost against Alexander Usyk that December, knocked him down in 2 and 3, but finished in round 4 by TKO in a 6-round fight. And then he even lost against a future champion, and even in 2014, he lost against Dominic Breazeale by round 1 KO. And then months later, he lost against future champion Trevor Bryan. So, yeah, another journeyman guy that would lose a lot more fights. He even later lost against Jesus Escalera in 2023, the guy that lost against Jonathan Goudry, friggin' Don King's friggin' Balboa fighter, if that makes sense. Surprising that his last fight was in December 2024 this year, and he lost that fight. So, yeah, the first 2 fights, and also Alexander Usyk did weigh at 206 pounds in that fight. His first 2 professional fights in the heavyweight are pretty decent. Yeah. His third professional fight would be against Ben Safoa in April 26 at 200.5 pounds, and nothing much. This was his first time he ever boxed out of his country of Ukraine. He went to Germany, knocked him out by round 3 of KO. And then on May the 31st at 200.5 pounds, he fought as well. And by the way, Ben Safoa was 197.25 pounds, and they still added it as a heavyweight fight. But yeah, a month later, he goes back to his country and takes on Cesar David Krenz, a 21-8 fighter, which he was a decent journeyman fighter, but nothing much to talk about than the other 2 fighters. And yeah, Usyk knocked him down in round 3, but finished him in round 4 by KO in an 8-round fight. His second 8-round fight. Yeah, 2 fights in 6, and his third and fourth fight were in 8 rounds. But then Usyk decided after 4 professional fights, they might have thought maybe they should take it down a notch. So what did they do? Well, they decided to let him lose a couple pounds, and by October the 4th, 2014, he would debut in the cruiserweight against Daniel Brewer for the interim WBO Intercontinental Cruiserweight title. And surprisingly, he had a hard fought. It was a 10-round fight, and after 7 rounds by TKO, he won. 2 months later, someone vacated that Intercontinental belt, and he took on Donnie Venter. And Donnie Venter did put on a tough performance for Usyk. He scored out judges. Even though Usyk won by 9 rounds by TKO in a 10-round fight with 3 minutes and 31 seconds left of the final fights, or the final minutes of the fight, even though he had 31 seconds left of the 9th round and 3 more minutes of the final round. Surprisingly, the judges' scores were pretty close, with 74 to 78. 2 judges scored it for Usyk, and the other 77 to 75 for Usyk. Yeah, interesting, tough fight. even though Donnie Venter wasn't much of a great contender in South Africa, he lost against the guys that were not contenders, and he won against people that weren't nobodies in this country. And this was his first time he ever left his country of South Africa to fight in Ukraine against Usyk, and he put on a tough show for him. Of course, Donnie would retire in 2016. He had one fight in 2015 against a nobody, and then in February 2016, he lost against Marius Briedis by round 2 TKO, which would later become another victim for Usyk. Crazy. But yeah. So we come to April 18th, 2015. Usyk is WBO Intercontinental Cruiserweight title. He is now retaining that title against Andre Niazev. And surprisingly, he held himself up pretty good. Now, it's crazy that Usyk does not go for early stoppages. He gets him after a bunch of rounds and finishes him off in round 8 by TKO. That's all she wrote. Come August the 29th, he fights again in his country again against Johnny Muller. And Johnny Muller had interesting resume that year, but nothing much special. And speaking about special, Usyk got him in round 3 by TKO in the final seconds of that round. Yeah, and fun fact, that was his first 12-round fight. Crazy. And then come December the 12th, he takes on Pedro Julio Rodriguez and got him in, knocked him early in the middle rounds, but then finished him in round 7 by TKO. So after 2 years, he's ranked up 9 wins. What can possibly go wrong? Well, his 10th professional fight would take him a long time because he would go to the country of Poland taking on Golowski, a Polish cruiserweight champion, 26-0, undefeated in his backyard. And by the way, guys, after the Pedro Julio Rodriguez fight in December the 12th, 2015, would be Usyk's last fight in his country. So, yeah. It is what it is. But yet again, it's pretty not that bad for what it is. It's pretty good. Give me a second. I'll be right back in just a second. Okay. Anyway, so coming right back to competition, ladies and gentlemen, this is what he did. Now, nothing much to talk about this fight. Usyk just went out there and did his performance. And as Usyk, as the 2012 Olympic heavyweight gold medalist from Ukraine, in his 10th professional fight, 4 years after he won the gold medal, that's, yeah, I really don't know what to say. It's pretty interesting. And he went out there and won. 2 scores had it, 117 to 111 and 119 to 109 for one judge. Usyk had him. But even though it took him over 9 months to fight until September, you think this would be his one fight in 2016. Not really, because his last fight in 2016 would be in Forum Inglewood in California, USA, against Fabiuso Machunu Machonu, and surprisingly, he put out a performance against this guy. Like, he knocked him down hard in round 6 and twice in round 9, and won in his debut in U.S. Like he traveled from country to country to win the world title and to retain it in their backyard. And then come April the 8th, he takes on Michael Hunter, a 12-0 undefeated fighter. And surprisingly, Michael Hunter almost thought he found the rhythm of defeating a guy that would later become a future champion. In the first few rounds, he took him on, got through round 1, and demolished him in round 2 and 3, found some open spots. It comes to round 4, and it looked like he found his groove again, but Usyk managed to find it in that round. He comes straight to round 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He was dominating every round. And then he decided to finish off the 12th round with a knockout, which Hunter got back up, but it was a 10-8 round. And after 12 rounds, all 3 judges had it, like myself, 117 to 110. And so, yeah, it was a pretty... This one made it a little bit surprising for Hunter that no one ever expected. And Usyk found the rhythm in those 9 rounds. Man, in the MGM National Harbor in Oxon Hill, would never forget about the day of how Usyk just found that groove. Man, Maryland really wasn't expecting nothing. And even for Bob Arum and Russell Peltz that were the promoters that day, like, even though Vasily Lomachenko already had his great win against Jason Sosa that same day for the WBO World Super Featherweight Champion, and Alexander Golovkin had his own wins at the time, but before some other moments. So, yeah, the Ukraine boxers in 2017 were really kicking it. So now we go to September the 9th, 2017. Oleksandr Usyk is number 1 in the cruiserweight. And this is the World Boxing Super Series tournament for the cruiserweight titles. All 8 boxers, with several of them having a piece of that cruiserweight title, which means after the finals, the winner takes all. So, Usyk, I don't know what to say. Usyk really, it was, guys, this fight did take on a really big turn. Because Marco Hulk decided to go to press conferences and start throwing out horrific things. Like, he was trying to needle Oleksandr Usyk. It was that bad. But you know what was even more bad? Is that they showed us the cover, or the the poster cover of the fight that was going to take place in Germany in Marco Huck's backyard, where Oleksandr fought. Believe me, all of his cruiserweight title fights would take place in his fighter's backyard. I don't know what to say about that. But the bad thing about the poster is that someone incorrectly misspelled Oleksandr's first name with an A instead of an O. Damn. But what's even bad is that Marco Huck was actually throwing a lot of dirty things in the press conference, but in the ring. And there was some moments that Oleksandr Usyk was finding the rhythms in that fight. It was a dirty encounter. And even got worse in round 8, where Usyk was trying to get some punching in, but then he actually slipped. And instead of the referee for the Huck to listen to the referee to tell him to go, Marco just walks up to him while he took a slip on his knee, and he decides to throw a punch while Usyk was down on the deck, even after he slipped. It was bad. He was deducted a point, and then a couple rounds later, Usyk started throwing everything, hurting him with nonstop assault, and Robert Byrd, the referee, stopped the fight. It was a dirty start to the tournament, but he got the job done. And then we come to 2018, which was Oleksandr Usyk's greatest year of all time. January the 27th, he goes to Arena Riga in Latvia against Maris Briedis for his WBC champion, and also I think he also was also fighting for mostly. Someone said that there was also the Ring magazine belt that was on the line that day, but we might not know. But we do know that all the gold, the Ring, and the lineal weight title were vacant in the finals. So who knows? But this fight took it interestingly. Now, Marius, he's doing a great job for everything. He has the crowd in his hands. He comes into this fight, and he just finishes the first 2 rounds with ease. Usyk comes in the third round, gets his own offense in, and round 4 we get again another Breedis round. We get to round 5, which had to be one of Usyk's second best rounds of the fight. And then we come to round 6, which seems like Breedis did a good job, and he went through round 6. And but then after round 7 and round 8, which was a full demolishing of Oleksandr Usyk, and he was finding his marks. If you watch the fight, you'll be surprised. We come to round 9, and Breedis is putting all his energy in. He gets his 5th round done, and after 9 rounds, he's already winning by 1 point, which means all he has to do is get a 6th rounder in, or even so, try to make the match a draw. Because at this moment, this match could end in a draw. But of course, in World Series of Boxing, they do have a 4th judge that can pronounce who won the fight. So at this moment, it seemed like Breedis had this fight in the bag. But then Usyk came out of nowhere in round 10, put out one of his best rounds in the fight, in my opinion. Comes in round 11, finishes him off, takes the lead, and the 12th and final round had to be a really tough round for both guys. And Usyk managed to finish off with ease, as he always did. Like, he went into those last 3 rounds and finished it nonstop. And I had it 115 to 113 for Usyk, while 2 other judges had it the same way. One had it 114 even, and Usyk was unified champion. We come to July the 21st, 2018, and now we're in Moscow, Russia for Murat Gassiv, IBF and WBA Cruiserweight Champion. What has he been doing right now in the tournament? Well, considering Usyk has been taking time ending fights later and tried to finish fights later with a bang, Murat has been doing great. He went to a round 3 KO fight in the USA against Wardowski, a Polish legend in the cruiserweights. And then he defeats Juniel Dorticos, another fighter we just mentioned in this episode. Knocks him out with only 8 seconds left of the final round, even though he was winning by points. So he has 2 knockout wins. Great. But this fight was so uneventful. It was all 12 rounds of domination for Usyk. I had 120 to 108. One judge had it the same way, but 2 others had 119 to 109. That's all you have to know. And Usyk, IBF, WBO, WBA, WBC, the Ring Magazine, and the lineal cruiserweight champion. And yes, the Ring Magazine and the lineal were vacant. He has won every single belt in cruiserweight. That's such an amazing accomplishment. And surprisingly, this was his 4th title defense in cruiserweight with his WBO. So, and as for everything else, I really can't say much about the fights. There was nothing, like, early in the fight, it seemed competitive, but yeah, from the start to finish, it was all Usyk. It was a dominating fight, and that's all you have to know. And then his next fight was Tony Bellew on November the 10th in Manchester Arena, the UK. Tony Bellew comes off of a couple wins. He was a former cruiserweight champion at the time, a couple years ago, but decided to go a couple fights with David Haye. But now he's back in the cruiserweights, fighting for undisputed. And Usyk decides to end 2018 with a bang. He comes into that fight, and just like Michael Hunter, Tony Bellew dominates the first 3 rounds. And it seemed like it was all over. He barely went through round 4, barely, and Usyk might have jumped him there a little bit. Got through round 5 again with Usyk. And round 6 was a close round, which seemed like Bellew might have won. But when you look at it, it could be Usyk. But I had Bellew at the time. Come round 7, and it was one of the most horrorish rounds I've ever seen for Usyk. He demolished Bellew, and come round 8, he sure finished the fight off with a bang. Like, I had the fight 67 to 66 in that fight, favored for Bellew. One judge had it the same way. One was 67 even, question mark, and the other was 68 to 65. So, also for Bellew. So, Bellew was leading the fight halfway into that entire fight, but him starting early in the fight was pretty tough. And even though he wasn't at his prime, he did put in an interesting performance. And Usyk just found the right attitude and the right opportunity to end the fight. Don't get me wrong, Bellew did an okay job. He did what he had to do. But in post-fight quotes was pretty interesting because in Usyk's quotes, Usyk said, "I was trying to control myself in the first rounds, to control my boxing rather than just fighting. I had the most difficult year in my life. Now I want to relax and spend time with my family, and after that I will think about the future. We need to put goals in front of us and move towards them." And you look at it, there was some points to it. There's also an interesting post-fight quote here, which says, "With Eddie Hearn, we can do great things in boxing. Usyk definitely needs to fight Anthony Joshua," said Oleksandr Krasiuk, the K2 Promotions with co-promoters of Usyk with Matchroom Sports. And mostly at that moment, don't get me wrong, this was during the time when Anthony Joshua defended his title against Oleksandr Poviekin before the Andy Ruiz fight. So it made sense why they wanted to put this on the line at the time. But at this moment, when you look at it, there is a lot of interesting stuff here. And even though Tony Bellew was the first British fighter that Usyk would take on in the pros, was not going to be the last. And by the end of 2010s, the 2020s would become British mania for Oleksandr Usyk. But yet again, guys, Usyk's career was going to change with the British boxers early on. Because he would take 11 months off in boxing and would not come back again until October the 12th, 2019, in Wintrust Arena in Chicago, Illinois, USA, live on Eddie Hearn Promotions. And the reason for that, it's pretty simple, because considering this was his heavyweight debut, Oleksandr Usyk weighed 198 and a quarter pounds after the Bellew fight. He comes into this fight at 215. He gained 15 to 20 pounds entering in this fight. That's gaining that amount of weight in those months might take a toll. But what makes this moment crazy is that Oleksandr Usyk was originally supposed to take on Tyrone Spong. That was going to be an interesting opponent for him at the time, but just like Jarrell Miller failing drug tests against Anthony Joshua months ago, Tyrone Spong also failed multiple drug tests as well. Yeah, 2019 was a year for heavyweight boxers failing drug tests. Unbelievable. So their last minute replacement was Chaz Witherspoon. And yeah, Chaz Witherspoon, the sibling of two-time forgotten heavyweight champion by Don King Promotion of Tim Witherspoon. And yeah, surprisingly or not, it was not a good fight. The guy was the hype job, nobody. It was a bad fight. We went 7 rounds. Oleksandr demolished him. And after the end of the 7th round came to an end, they called the fight off by cornerman retirement, and that was it. This would be the last fight Usyk would fight in America, which it doesn't really matter. But then it would take himself another year off in boxing. I guess it makes sense, guys. 2019 was the first time he ever fought one fight a year. And I guess this makes sense for 2020, 21, 22, and 23 because of his weight that he had to get used to and COVID. And of course, it took him over a friggin' year until he got back to the ring on October the 31st in Wembley Arena by Derek Chisora. And Chisora decided to come into the fight wearing makeup like a clown. And you know what? I'll give him credit. He did a good job. And speaking about doing a good job, he did put in a good performance, a better performance. With 9 losses in Chisora's career, he did expose a little bit of stuff for Usyk. at the time after dominating the first couple rounds against Usyk. By round 6 was another close round that Usyk barely had to win, and even come round 4 was a really closer round, and I thought Chisora won that round in round 4. It seemed like he did. But after round 5 and round 6, 7, 8, it was all Usyk's rounds. Like, he had to recover from those rounds early on. And then round 9 was another pretty tough round that was hard for me to judge for Usyk to win that round. And round 10 was another tough round, which was more tougher for me believing that Chisora won that round, and I kind of gave it to him. But the last 2 rounds were all Usyk, and I had 116 to 112. A couple had 115 to 113, and one had 117 to 112, which is weird because one of those judges decided to give it a 10-10 in one of the rounds. Yeah, and by the way, when looking at the fight, there were some moments because after that fight, some people did question if Usyk was ready. I pointed out that Usyk was not ready for a heavyweight title. I think it's probably for best for him to get used to his body weight and try to see what he's doing wrong before he takes on Joshua. And also, guys, by the way, after AJ lost against Ruiz, he won a rematch in December, and he already had another fight against Kubrat Pulev. So, and even though Joshua did have problems because he had a new boxing strategy of every time a person tries to attack him, he would push he would use his glove to push their glove away to scare them off, waiting if they were going to attack him. Sometimes that works in fights for Joshua, but not every fighter it's going to work. And surprisingly, Usyk found that strategy of Joshua pretty quickly because by September the 25th, 2021, yeah, live in Tottenham Stadium, Hotspur Stadium, love that place, we would have a great 12-round battle for the WBA, IBF, IBO, and WBO title, Usyk and Joshua. And Usyk did suffer in this fight because he did got a cut on his right eye, on his right eyebrow at the fight. So he had to earn this win. And surprisingly, and it is interesting because the bout was official on July the 20th at the time. So there was a lot of talk. There was going to be something about this. And it's pretty tough. Oh, yeah, and fun fact. Speaking about that Derek Chisora fight in Halloween last year, that fight was also for the WBO Intercontinental Heavyweight title. So, yeah, another heavyweight title for the WBO. Good job, Usyk. What a great Intercontinental champion. Even better than Santino Marella in WWE. Amazing. Maybe not better than The Miz, but better than someone. But yes, this fight was pretty interesting. Like, Usyk went on to the first 4 rounds and just found the weakness of Joshua. It was shocking. And even though Joshua came back in round 5 and round 6, but then even after he won round 9, round 8, no, round, well, he did went on 2 through rounds 4. He did get round 5, round 6, but round 7 was an Usyk round. I know that, but was it round 8? Yeah, it was round 8. Yes. Yeah. So after 8 rounds of competition with Usyk in 5 and Joshua got round 5, 6, and 8, it seemed like it was going to be a good battle. Even though Usyk got him early in the fight, I just wish Joshua got him early in the fight. And Joshua, his strategy in his fights with Andy Ruiz and Kubrat Pulev might have worked. But for an Oleksandr Usyk and his 6'3" stature and not a heavy person, almost like an Evander Holyfield or a Michael Spinks coming out of the lower ranks to find the heavyweight, yeah, Usyk, I underestimated him that day when I saw this fight. When he went through round 8, round 9, and round 10 and hurted AJ so much in round 11 and almost knocked him down in round 12 but didn't. Yeah, I had this fight 117 to 111. And of course, another judge had it the same way, but he decided to add a 112 to 117, giving 110-10 round. Other judges had 116 to 112, 115 to 113, all favoring unanimous decision Usyk. This was a pretty great story moment. But guys, the moment is about to get worse because this is the moment where boxing in Saudi Arabia was going to be a thing. Because in 2020 or 2019, by the end of the year, Andy Ruiz and AJ had their rematch in Saudi Arabia. And they were going to places like Riyadh and Jeddah, which were places where they had arenas. And in August the 20th, 2022, well, originally they had a rematch clause that was triggered on October the 9th, 2021, and paperwork was done by June the 11th, even though I thought they were going to fight early. But of course, even around that time, they had Tyson Fury that wanted to fight against Deontay Wilder in May, but they had to reschedule it for October. So around this time, they had a lot of things done for themselves. So, and by the way, even though Usyk was at this time, they generated a big buy rate in the UK. So it's they generate a lot in this fight. By the way, guys, this fight was also for the vacant Ring Magazine and Lineal World Heavyweight title as Tyson Fury decided to strip those belts and keep the WBC Cruiserweight title as it's more legit than those titles. So, good job, Fury. You did a good job. What were you thinking of? But anyway, guys, Usyk went on to win two more titles. And guys, I don't want to talk about the fight. I want to talk about the aftermath of the fight because Usyk comes in, he wins the first round, but then Joshua comes into round 2 and round 3 barely to win. And then Usyk just comes out and throws out a fight of a lifetime. He was outboxing Joshua in round 4 and somehow round 5 and got barely a little bit of a round 6 there, which some people, even some judges, thought round 6 was an AJ round, but I kind of had it for Usyk. I really did give Usyk round 6, but 3 of the judges decided to give AJ round 6 question mark, but I guess there was some closeness there, who knows, but I didn't see anything won there. And then round 7 was Usyk, and round 8 was a pretty close round, which thought, so I decided to give it to AJ for the heck of it. And then he won one dominated round 9, which was AJ's better round that day. And then the last 3 rounds were all Usyk rounds. So I had it a good whopping of a, well, pretty much. Did it really matter? Well, maybe not. I had it 116 to 112. Favored Usyk. AJ got 1 point off better than me in the second fight. I gave him 117 to 111 in the first, but this fight 116 to 112 better, but not close enough. One judge got it 116 to 112 for me as well for Usyk. 3 judges had 115 to 113, but one judge decided to give it to Joshua and the other gave it to Usyk, ending a split decision. So yeah, that's all you guys have to know. It's crazy. Round 6 is still a confusing round. Why did the 3 judges give AJ round 6? I don't never know. But yes, all it matters, guys, Usyk is now the lineal champion. But after the fight was over, the information was crazy. And I did found footage that was shocking. And guys, I don't blame AJ. I can understand if I was in his shoes that day, I would be out of my mind. And it would be hard for me to control my life. Not because I might not be strong again, but I might not have fans anymore to be with me anymore. So I can understand why he lost his mind, but he should have taken it more calm and just left the ring the same way Tyson Fury left the ring in the second Usyk fight. Not talking in the mic. He decided to leave even though he was upset to keep his anger inside of him in the dressing room. But no, AJ decided to do the complete opposite than Tyson Fury did in the second fight. He walks over, he does everything, he doesn't know what to do. They're giving Usyk the belts, and then AJ grabs the Ring magazine that he always wanted, and he grabs the WBA belt away from Usyk. He's putting him in the air, showing it to the crowd. He goes near the top rope and drops him. He walks back and goes to Usyk's team. He's trying to, I don't even know what he's doing near Usyk's team. His team is trying to stop him. He climbs out of the ring. He walks back to the dressing room. Or so we thought until he changed his mind. He walks back to the ring. He goes over. He's telling Oleksandr Usyk, "Oh, dude, why did you beat me? I'm better than you. I'm stronger than you. It don't really matter. I have character. I have this or that." And Usyk is just trying to explain it to him. Even though he's not much of an English person, he's trying his best to explain it to him, and he's trying to calm AJ down, but it's not working. Not only he walks towards him to argue with him, he grabs the Ukraine flag off of Usyk's back and puts it on his back. And at this moment, Usyk's trying to tell him to listen, but he doesn't. He grabs the mic. He's trying to talk, but someone forgot to mic up the arena. And then he goes, and finally the mic works. He tells him he wants to give everyone a round of applause for Usyk. And he's putting a lot of cuss words, swear words, this or that, telling him, "Oh, I was in prison, man. I was in prison. Dude, why do you think I lost? I lost this fight, man. I'm a big guy. I'm not like Oleksandr Usyk. I'm like, dude, it's so bad because just because he's going hip hip hooray 5 times, champ. And he was throwing so much stuff in the mic that I can't even listen to everything he said. It was like, yeah, he was losing it. He was swearing. He was throwing everything out the book. Like, guys, guys, people think Tyson Fury is such a squeamish child, and him saying that he believed he won the fight. But dude, at least Tyson Fury wasn't swearing and throwing stuff in the mic and throwing the belts down the ground the same way AJ did in the second fight. At least Tyson Fury walked out of the ring and decided not to be involved in a post-fight interview in the ring. He just walked out, and because he knew he was upset, he did a much better job than AJ did. Like, AJ went on a horrendous rant. He was only talking about himself and about how he got to this position. It was, yeah, he was really out of it. I feel bad because it seemed like AJ was never going to recover again. And he barely did 1 fight at the time, but after his Daniel Dubois fight last year, yeah. It was tough. It was tough. Like his Jermaine Franklin, Otto Valine, Robert Helenius, and that Francis Ngannou. At the end of the day, I don't know. It seemed like AJ has not recovered since. It was bad. And even bad because on August the 26th, live in Poland, we would have Oleksandr Usyk retaining his titles against Daniel Dubois, WBA regular champion. Don't want to talk about the WBA. I've talked about it a bunch of times, and I'm still upset about Daniel Dubois' title reign that day, or his entire run in the WBA. All you viewers have to know about this is that Usyk went into this fight demolishing round 1, round 2, round 3. Round 4, well, it was a close round. It seemed, it was a little bit close. I still think Usyk won that fight. And then round 5, I did give it to Daniel Dubois, even though I thought Usyk did better. But round 5 was the more talked about round where we had a little bit of a body punch right below the belt. Down goes Usyk. And the referee decides to give Usyk a 5-minute break. And even though, guys, if you guys look at the fight before the first round did run the bell, the referee did warn both fighters, pointed at where the bell line was. He did tell them where the bell line was. He showed Daniel Dubois his bell line and Oleksandr Usyk's bell line where not to punch, telling them to shake it, have a fight, touch gloves, and shake them up. The referee did tell them where the belt line was. Like, Louis Pabon did a good job refereeing the fight. The only person that had to expose this was that Oleksandr Usyk had his navel on the belt line. Now, let me show you, viewers, so you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, guys, this right here is my belly button. So let's just say that if I had to put my boxing trunks right here, where my navel is, right here, you could tell that if someone throws a body punch right here, it might sting your body and the blow right to your ding-a-ling. but still, it's only getting the belly right here. And guys, I have seen that photo of Muhammad Ali and him standing up to Sonny Liston, and his belt was on his navel. So it is hard to tell where you want to know where the low blow is or where the below the belt, because when looking at the replay, Daniel Dubois didn't hit Usyk in the dingling, but he did go below the belt. So it is hard because, guys, the below the belt is one of the most controversial things in boxing, almost like the yellow line rule in NASCAR. If you go below the yellow line in Daytona or Talladega, you will be penalized. Even if someone forced you below the yellow line, you'll get a 50-50 that you might be penalized. It is bad. But you know what's more upsetting? After the end of round 5, which had to be Daniel Dubois' better round, round 6, 7, 8, 9, Usyk dominated. He got him in round 8 and got a knockout on him. And then in the final seconds of the fight, or the first 30 or so seconds of the 9th round, the fight ends with Usyk throwing a good quick jab. Down goes Dubois, and that's it. 48 seconds of the 9th round. Take it home. But you know what's crazy? After they had their post-fight interview and their press conference, which Usyk talked about his belly as well, that he showed it to the public. But the problem was, after his post-fight interview in the ring, they interviewed Dubois, and his team are losing their mind. They're saying, "Hey, Jade, he won that fight. This is fixed. He won that fight." One of Dubois' trainers is losing his mind, which I don't blame him. And then the female reporter goes up to Daniel, and he told him, "Oh, I feel like I won that fight," Dubois said. The first thing I'm like is, dude, you feel like you won the fight? Did you see what you got yourself into? Like, you just got yourself demolished in several rounds of boxing, and you feel like you won the fight? Dude, after you low-blowed Usyk in round 5, you didn't even capitalize in any of the rounds. You just got yourself beat in 4 more rounds after he knocked you out in round 9, and you believed you won that fight. It almost looked like Dubois was going to let Usyk beat the crap out of him in 4 more rounds and end the fight, and then he would say, "Oh, I believe I won the fight because of round 5, because of the low blow." It was like, guys, Dubois believes he wants a rematch with Usyk, but after watching this fight, why would you want a rematch? It's ridiculous. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. So it is ridiculous because even though Dubois got the body punch on Usyk and not a knockout, he never capitalized on it once. It just upsets me, and it was just, I just didn't like it. And then we come to May the 18th, 2024. Now, originally, they were going to have a fight in December, but of course, after Francis Ngannou already shuffled Tyson Fury's brain in their fight, and then, of course, they were going to fight in February, but Usyk was upset after Fury had a little bit of a damaged eye socket in a sparring fight on footage. Well, they had their fight in May the 18th in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom Arena. Guys, I talked about this fight on my podcast, so all I'm going to say is Usyk went to round 1, round 2, barely round 3. That would have been interesting enough for a Fury round, which I did, and I thought Usyk won that fight barely. But then you go to round 4, round 5, round 6, and round 7, and I was like, oh God, man, Fury is doing it. He's doing it. We go to round 8, and he messed up. It was bad because looking back at the fight again, yeah, there was a lot of showboating and other problems that Fury was doing in this fight, and it was fun. But it wasn't funny until round 9 when Usyk was hitting him around like a pinball machine from rope to rope, and the ropes were protecting Fury, and the referee counted a knockout. He gets into round 10 and 11, and round 12 was a really close round, so I gave it to Fury. I had it 115 to 112. One judge had it the same way for Usyk. One had it 114 to 113 for Fury, but the last judge had it the same way for Usyk. So the fight ended, and even though some people did believe that the fight was 6 rounds apiece, and I almost would think that because Even though Fury might have won round 3, as I said before, maybe. But at the end of the day, even if he did, it wouldn't matter because 6-6, 1 point abduction in round 9 for Fury meant it was a 10-8 for Usyk, meant the score was 6-5 or 7-4. It still would have been the same score. So Usyk would have won. And even the sporting news of Dom Farrow was the only guy on the agency that gave it 114 and 113 for Usyk. The Independent of Axel Paddle and Jack Rothborn, Mike Coppinger from ESPN, and Fight Freaks of Dan Raphael had it 115 112 for Usyk. While The Guardian and Bad Left Hook of Patrick Stumberg and Brian Graham of The Guardian had 116 111 for Usyk. Still, it would have been a close fight. Some people had it interestingly favored for Usyk, and I can understand that. Even though Fury earned $105 million with $45 million for Usyk, yeah, this was a deserving win. Under barely, if you don't count the months, you can count 25 years after the last undisputed in November the 13th, 99 for Lewis defeating Holyfield. Guys, the last fight, December the 21st, 2024. So after winning the WBC belt, a month later, he strips out the IBF, which means the IBF is not on the line, but the other belts are. Guys, I've talked about the fight. I judged my fight as I did before. Usyk gets round 1, barely, and I did thought round 2 was another tough round that Fury might have won, but I did saw a little bit of landed punches in that fight, and some commentators and people got argument about that they didn't know what they were looking at, but the first 2 rounds were close. Even like the first 3 rounds were close as well, because I did thought Fury won round 3. So don't get me wrong, the first 5 rounds were close rounds to hard to judge. Like Usyk gets round 4, and then we had a left hook for Fury in round 5, and he got Usyk stumbled, which was his better round. But then you come to round 6, 7, 8, 9, 8, and you get Usyk rounds. Round 9 was another round that got tough enough until Usyk stole that round away from Fury, but it was a close round, but I think he did better in round 9. And then round 10, I gave it to Fury for the heck of it. It was a close round, but I decided to give him one just for the fun of it. The last 2 rounds were all Usyk rounds. I had 117 to 111. The other 3 judges had 116 to 112. But you know what's crazy? I just looked up the agency writers, and surprisingly, this is what happened. So Mike Coppinger gave it 115 to 113 for Usyk. Same with Brian Tucker from MMA Fighting. But then we had the independent of Jack Rothborn had 116 to 112 for Usyk. Like Brent Brookhouse from CBS Sports, same thing. Bad Left Hook of Scott Christ had 116 to 112. The Sporting News of Tom Gray had 116 to 113. And the New York Times, Luke Brown had 117 to 111. All favored for Usyk. Hey, good job, Luke Brown. You're my favorite. And guys, I even looked up the total punches and CompuBucks. And what's crazy that the total punches landed, Usyk landed 6 punches like Fury did in the first round. But the power punches were the effect because Usyk landed 4 power punches and Fury 3. And in round 2, like said, Usyk landed 16 total punches, a lot for 11 for Fury. And round 3 was Fury giving me a 10-8 for 10-9 for Fury. Usyk landed 12 to 11 by Fury in round 3. Even though he had 9 power punches and 6 power punches landed for Fury, I still gave him round 3, so I kind of did question that of, wow, I really judged that 3rd round wrong. And I even judged round 4 wrong because Fury landed 10 and Usyk landed 10 and Fury got 11 punches landed. Even though Fury got 8 to 6 power punches landed in that round. Same thing for round 5 because he got 11 to 9 power punches landed, beating Usyk in that. Even though Usyk landed 15 punches to 13 total in round 5. So, yeah, I'm surprised. It's crazy that the most punches that Usyk landed in round 3 and 5, and I gave that to Fury. Man, sometimes his brain doesn't work. But yeah, round 1 was an even round, while round 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 were all Usyk because he landed more punches in those rounds. And round 4 was a Fury round. And I'm surprised I didn't give it to Fury. Wow. But the power punches were in effect because in round 6, 14-10, Usyk won that round. 8-5 by power punches landed. 7-3 power punches were landed in round 7, and Usyk won that easily by landing 12-9 punches total. Yeah, 15 punches to 12 in round 8. Usyk won. Round 9, 21 punches to 16 landed, even though Fury got 15 power punches to 11 in that round. More for Usyk, and same thing for round 10. He landed 13-7 power punches, even though Usyk landed 16-15 total punches in round 10. But yet again, I thought Fury won that round. But yet again, the power punches were the factor of round 10. Because he barely didn't land a lot of punches, but the power punches were effect, like round 9. But yeah, round 9, round 10 were tough enough. And then round 11, 14 power punches to 10 for Usyk, 22-14 total. And round 12 was 20-16 total landed punches, 11 even in power punches. So, yeah, when looking up the box numbers for power punches in that's so that's a little bit ridiculous that there would have been moments that you would think that maybe Fury might have won 4 or 5 rounds, which might be possible. It could be possible. I can almost see maybe if Fury did win round 9 and round 10, maybe round 5 and round 4, and maybe you could give him round 1. He might have won 5 rounds. It's possible. It could be Fury's time. Maybe he did got robbed. But the thing was, when looking at the fight, Usyk definitely demolished him in round 4, as I thought. But round 6, 7, 8, 11, and 12 were 5 of the biggest dominated rounds in Usyk's career. He dominated 5 out of 12 rounds. And even though it might be possible, but yet again, it was a pretty close fight by standard in the first, but not better in the second. It is what it is. All right, guys, we're coming to the end of this stream, guys, and even though we're almost at the 1 hour mark, so I might as well end this episode now. Now it's time to get to my top 3 picks of which is my favorite fights in Usyk's career. So, guys, my number 1 pick is definitely Oleksandr Usyk versus Tyson Fury 1. Definitely an easy pick. It was an easy fight. It was a pretty tough, close fight. And it was pretty good. But you viewers might be really confused about my next picks. Number 2 would have to be Maris Briedis for the semifinals of the Cruiserweight tournament in 2018. And my number 3 pick is Tony Bellew for the Cruiserweight Undisputed title defense. Like, you look back at those fights were memorable. But, guys, the thing is, guys, I enjoyed the other fights he had in his career, recovering from Marco Huck and his dirtiness, making a wild comeback from Michael Hunter, and even talking about his amazing win for Derek Chisora. But here's the thing, guys. Guys, the reason I picked Tony Bellew at number 3 and Maris Briedis as number 2 and Tony Bellew number 3 on the list more than his heavyweight fights with AJ and Fury 2 and Dubois is because that AJ had problems after because he didn't recover always, because he might have was trying to regain his composure after his Andy Ruiz loss. Without that, it would have been a different story. And to be honest, I really can't say much about that other than it is what it is. Even Dubois tried to recover from his loss against Joe Joyce. And Fury was barely recovering from a lot of trash talk with his rematch against Derek Chisora in December 2022 and his Francis Ngannou, and he was already having problems with his career. And not only that, Fury came in the first fight at 262, only to weigh 281 the second fight. And Usyk was 223.5 in the first and 226, the heaviest of Usyk's career in that second fight with Fury. And Fury was 281. So But so that was a tough fight for me to believe I deserved to be in the top three. AJ Dubois and Chisora were having problems in their career, and it was pretty tough for me to believe that I because they were already insufferable at the time. It was like watching Michael Spinks being a light heavyweight champion. He was a great light heavyweight champion, but he was forgotten. He was an undisputed light heavyweight champion, and when he went up to heavyweight, won 2 fights against Larry Holmes, had a title defense against Jerry Cooney, and then another guy that I don't know much about. And after Michael Spinks was stripping out every single title in his career until he lost against Tyson for his lineal title, it was ridiculous. But yet again, Usyk did a little bit better because Usyk did remind me of Michael Spinks. Like I said before, Usyk had a better career as a cruiserweight, and I think that has to be more deserved. I want to talk about more about his cruiserweight fights than his heavyweight fights. But yet again, guys, seeing Usyk fight in 2020 to 2024 and his last 6 fights in the 2020s are all British fighters is pretty tough for me to look at. So, yeah, his Maris Briedis and Tony Bellew fight in 2018, and even though his Usyk and Fury 1 fight were number one, his cruiserweight fights do have an interesting thing to talk about, and I think that's something we should talk about more about how he became a cruiserweight champion. At the end of the day, you guys have your own opinions. What do you think? Well, if you guys have your favorite top 3 fights of Usyk fights, let me know in the comments. Thank you for you viewers watching this episode. And with that being said, the Foxwell says out for the GLOAT podcast. See you next time.